I'm Susan Holveck, and I will be one of the webinar presenters here. And I am working with Berkeley Gadbaw.
Hi, I'm Berkeley, and I teach 8th grade science. So I'm here, excited to be here.
Yeah, we're so glad you guys are here. And my name is Leah, and I'm here with OSTA to help just run the meeting and facilitate. And yeah, we will be in touch with everyone afterwards with more resources from today. So we'll be emailing everybody. And we just have a couple slides to get started to introduce Zoom, because we know for some people this might be your first time using Zoom. So people are automatically muted when they come into the meeting. So if you need to unmute, this is how you can do that, is click the mute or unmute button at the bottom. And we ask that people remain muted just because sometimes there's background noise and that can be a little distracting for other people. So just remember that when you want to ask a question that you'll need to unmute yourself. And we love to see everybody's face who's joining us. So if possible, if you have the technology to do so, we would love for you to turn on your video so we can see you and get a little FaceTime with our colleagues across the state. That's one of our goals, is to build relationships with other educators. And we will have some small group time. So if you would like to, you're able to share your screen in your small group. And that's how you would do it, is click the share screen button down here. Totally optional, but we will have a little breakout time. So if there's something you want to share that feels relevant, you would be able to do it that way. And this is our chat button. So if you have a question and you feel more comfortable typing it, you can go ahead and type it in the chat, and I can monitor that and try to address those questions as soon as we can. Other things to keep in mind, sometimes it's tricky with Zoom because it takes up your whole screen and it's a little hard to find where your web browser is. So you may need to hit the escape button to find something like a Padlet, which we are going to be using in just a little bit. So if you're having a hard time finding your web browser, just hit the escape key and that should help. And also, when you see the speakers in the meeting, you are able to change the size of that and drag the speaker view around the screen. So if it's in an inconvenient place for you and you can't see something, you can move it around. So just to let you know that that's possible. Great. So we're going to have a Padlet link coming to you in the chat in just a second. So we're going to ask you to open that up in a separate browser window and go ahead and respond. And I will open it here as well.
So the question that we're sending out to everybody is, what's one thing that you hope to learn from today's session? So we know that the session is on claim evidence reasoning, and we're just trying to get an idea of the variety of experience that people have coming into this webinar session.
And please let us know your name and your district or where you're coming from and what grades you work with in the title so we can get to know each other a little bit.
See some responses coming in. We encourage everyone to share, and if you haven't used the Padlet technology, it's a great way to poll students even, and it's a free application. So we have high school science teacher, 3rd grade, OSTA member.
Great, thanks. And just a reminder, if you're having a hard time getting to it, just hit escape and you should see your web browser pop up. And I'll post the link one more time for, I think we had a couple folks just join us.
We're going to periodically throughout the webinar, we are going to be putting links to resources that we are talking about in the webinar. So you definitely will want to have your chat window open and on the side of your screen so that you can view it. You might want to link on to some of those resources and then bookmark them for your use after the webinar. And of course, the webinar is being recorded as well, so you'll be able to come to these later. Like we have more people that are posting. Wonderful. Middle school teacher. And
oh, we got some people from Battleground.
Awesome. Yeah.
I think it's so fantastic that the West Coast states are all NGSS states and we're able to collaborate across state lines because we have the same standards. I think that's really exciting.
Mm-hmm. Okey-doke. Shall we get started? Because we just have an hour together.
Right. Go back over here.
So as you may have noticed that this webinar, we kind of promoted it as an extension of one that we began a couple of months ago. And this is Berkeley and my kind of best understanding of the top 4 strategies to Next Gen-ify Your Instruction. And so the number 1 strategy that we talked about was just really organizing instruction around student questions and really valuing student questioning. And the number 1 thing, of course, is that all lessons and units are developed around an anchoring phenomenon. We also realize that student discourse is really important, and that's going to be part of the claim evidence reasoning work as well, and that seeing students thinking and making that visible is another very important strategy. So if you're interested, we did share a number of different protocols and strategies for those 3 kind of high impact practices, and you can go to the webinar on the OSTA website to see those. But tonight we're really focusing on student explanations and using claim evidence and reasoning as a way to formatively assess and see student understanding and how it changes over time. Sometimes we think of claim evidence reasoning as being something that we use towards the end of a unit, and we want to kind of show you that it's really important to be using it all throughout the unit as you are looking at student learning and understanding over time. So one of the important things that that Berkeley has seen especially is that students just need to be writing all the time. That needs to be an integrated part of science instruction, and coupled with students speaking. So she has students writing just for 5-minute blocks to explain as much as they can about a particular model that they have of a given phenomenon. And we're going to show you some examples of what we're talking about. If this sounds like what is a phenomenon or what is a model, we're going to show you a specific example coming up. But we just want students to be writing, it can be doing it as an opener or sometime during the instruction, to just get students time to organize their own thinking and ideas. So the phenomenon that the next 3 examples are going to represent the models of student thinking is a phenomenon where students have to come up with an explanation of why during a sunset they can see pretty much in a straight line the moon as a crescent, the setting sun, Jupiter, which is a planet that is farther from the sun than the Earth, and Venus, which is a planet that is closer to the sun from the Earth. And this anchoring phenomenon really challenges students' ideas about modeling of the solar system. And we find that students struggle with taking what they think of as traditional models. And if you can think of images where all the planets are lined up in a row, and that we often teach Earth and Moon kind of separately from the solar system, that they really struggle with this. And so over the course of the unit, students are getting more experiences to try to explain this. We're kind of confronting these ideas that they have. So this example here is an initial explanation of a student that you can see that they have the planets kind of lined up in a line, and they are really this traditional drawing of the students, and we're asking them to explain. So they are referencing to how much light must interact with these objects for us to see them, so they understand that light is important for us to actually see these celestial objects. But it's really not explaining the complexity of the phenomenon that we're looking at. In the next example of a student explanation, you can see that there is some improvement over time. So the Earth is in the back because we're looking from it. And this idea of the perspective of looking from the Earth and where they are on the Earth when they are viewing this phenomenon is a really important one and is not often found in student explanations in the earliest parts of the unit. They're also getting an idea of that even though it's not a straight line alignment, that Venus is here and Jupiter is here, that they're trying to explain how you can actually do that in a solar system model. They're also proposing questions, and that was something that we really want students to be doing, and that can inform us on future work and instruction as teachers. Now this is further into the unit, and you can see that the student explanations are improving over time. They're more scientifically accurate. They have more evidence to support their claim. And this is the thing that we wouldn't see this at the beginning of instruction. And it's really important for us to have students understand and see their own growth and their own explanations over time. So I think you can read what's on there, but you can see that they're naming the planets, and even though Mercury isn't one that that we have in our anchoring phenomena, they're kind of showing where that might be in terms of the sun.
Can I just add one thing, Susan?
Yes.
I just wanted to add a teacher lens. So, and just to reiterate what Susan said in terms of making this a regular practice or part of your classroom. And I think sometimes as teachers, we feel like we have to read everything then that the student's writing. And it's just not possible usually. And so one tool that I use that I just wanted to throw out there each time I'm having students do this is I just take a photo of their work. And if that even seems high stakes for students, which most of the time they're fine, I just take 2 or 3 and I can read them later at home when I can process in a better space, or I can read them in between classes to know what I need to change for my next teaching, or that just becomes a very formative assessment tool that I think is really important. So just taking a couple quick photos of this journaling really provides insight into where students are in their writing and understanding.
And I remember you saying that, Berkeley, that just because the students are doing all of this writing, you as a teacher do not need to be reading all of it. And so I think that's really important part that you brought up. A lot of this is for the students to assess their own understanding, but your method of just kind of randomly picking students and taking pictures of their work so their journals can still go home with them or be put away, and you're not bringing them back and forth to school or grading them, is a really important one for teachers. That we don't want the implementation of NGSS and the instructional shifts to mean that you're working more. We just want it that you're working better or smarter.
And the other, other tip I was going to give is sometimes I will sit and do this during that quiet 5 minutes as well, because it just provides me a chance to model it for the students, like what quiet writing looks like. And I find they settle more if I'm joining them and just doing that, as opposed to walking around or even dinking around or whatever I'm doing. They sort of settle into that writing. And I realize what a gift it is to be able to just write about something without the pressure of being assessed or anything. So just wanted to share that too.
We wanted to open this up for questions, especially teachers who may wish to ask Berkeley like any more clarifying questions about how this looks in the classroom, or what you might struggle with, or what your questions are.
You're free to call out, or you can use the chat to type it if you would prefer.
Are any of you having students write in your classrooms, and do you struggle to get them to write? What are the barriers or rewards that you're seeing of students writing? And please unmute yourselves. We really want this to be a discussion, an interactive webinar.
I'll jump in.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
This is Andy Byerly. I would love, and you may have, I joined late, I'm sorry for that, but you may have talked about this before I did, but how do students iterate their writing in your classroom? Like, are they coming back to it and like we would a model where they're continually revising it and making it stronger? And if so, what have you found most successful with that?
Question. For me, their writing's happening in their science journal, so it's there stored. It's very easy to go back, and I do it differently depending on why. So usually for them, I have them just start a new page and write, and they're adding more to their understanding of whatever topic it is that we're talking about. I've done it before where they go back, and you could hand them a sticky note, and now they're going back and maybe finding something that was a misconception before, and adding a sticky note. How has new learning in the classroom changed since that last journal entry, or the previous journal entry? And so I don't think there's one right way to do that. I just think that, I think Susan said that a moment ago, but seeing their growth over time, or having them recognize how their ideas are changing, is really powerful. So providing time to do that.
And the other thing that I used to do with students is getting them to feel more comfortable with it, is allowing them, doing that think, pair, share. So giving them some time to do it on their own, and then talking to their shoulder partner or whatever. And then we would go around the room and bring it out. So you can kind of get kids to feel a little more safe because they weren't required. I mean, they need to engage with each other anyway. So this is a perfect way for them to practice writing on their own, and then getting some validation or even some help from their peers.
Yeah, there was a question in the chat, what kind of scaffolding do you provide? So that's one example for students who need more support to do. And I find that talk and writing can support each other. So that's a nice way to use talk as a way to support the writing.
And we will be sharing a couple of scaffolded pieces later in the webinar. and like, that are just kind of forms and things that teachers can use to help students with claim evidence reasoning. Any other questions before we move on? Or comments? Okay, I guess maybe we'll move on to the next thing.
All right. So in terms of writing claim evidence reasoning, which is I think where we're heading with some of this, I think one of the ways I start or reinforce this idea with kids, because they sometimes shy away from the, I don't know, the language behind claim evidence and reasoning, is I try to provide everyday examples. And so many times at the beginning of the year, but then throughout the year, I will write silly claim evidence reasonings about other events in life happening around us, or trying to get them to realize that when they're writing a claim evidence reasoning, they're really presenting an argument. And so this was a silly example that I used recently. Our student wrote out, we were arguing about the Blazers. And so this student wrote out why the Blazers, which now of course is irrelevant, but we're going to win the Western Conference Finals. And so just talking through what evidence might be and how that might look in everyday language. And then what, especially for the reasoning component, how reasoning is different from evidence, but helps build your argument. And so I just threw this in here as an example, since we're going to be talking about claim evidence reasoning.
But I just wanted to throw in there, this is a template that we do use, and it does have sentence frames. And I think, Berkeley, the fact that you're using it with something that students have some access and knowledge about helps provide that scaffolding for students to enter into this to create scientific explanations.
So next, we want to, I want to give an example, a very simple example that of a demonstration or a lab, or maybe you've used this in the past, or but where we're posing a question, and just to kind of give an example and talk through what exactly claim evidence reasoning are, and sort of to remind us of that. So we're just going to play this video, and the question students are talking about in this unit or whatever is air matter? And so we're just going to watch. There's 2 demonstrations as you watch this, and you can play that. Yeah, I can't remember if there's sound. Can describe it if we're having issues.
It may have to be played in present mode. I don't know if you can do it from your editing.
Oh, there you are.
Oh, there it goes.
And maybe you can make it full screen. There you go. Great. We can see it.
Beautiful. And there's just 2 demonstrations. Wish I could see everybody to see if people have done this before or not. So this first one is looking at how the balance changes once one of the balloons is popped and no longer has air. And the second so this is often a difficult concept for students to understand. So as many times for them to see and experience.
They have this idea that air is lighter, and so they will often predict that an inflated ball will weigh less than a ball that is not inflated?
And so in thinking about those two videos, if we were to make a claim to try to answer this question about is air matter, and Leah, if you go to the next slide, whoops, back one, sorry, thank you. A claim would be, you know, an idea that answers the question. And so a student might write, an example is at the bottom there, air is matter. That would be that their claim, that's something that they're going to argue. And the evidence that they might draw on that would be something from their experience, something that they're seeing there. And it could come from, you know, in this case, that exact lab or demonstration, but it could also come from readings or all kinds of places. Real life, students draw on their own life for evidence as well. But it might sound something like, we found that the mass of the ball increased each time we pumped more air into it. The mass started at 84.6 grams and ended at 85.1 grams. That would be their evidence. And then trying to reason that out, and this is the piece that oftentimes students struggle the most with, is how does that link back with science, scientific concepts to help provide clarification for your claim and help provide an explanation. So it might sound something like, this shows that air has mass, one of the characteristics of matter. And many times this is where your science vocabulary can come in, or again, readings can be drawn in for additional information there. And I think so that was mostly just to sort of frame and refresh us. All of us are in different places teaching different levels, but that's kind of what claim, evidence, and reasoning, that's what it looks like for a simple demonstration or lab. And I don't know, Susan, if you wanted to add anything before I keep going there.
I know that in our patterns high school courses, we really encourage almost for every lab report, and maybe Andy can chime in on this, to use this kind of a format and really teaching students where the data belongs, you know, that difference between what a claim is, how you tie that to the experimental data that you've just collected, and then how do you tie that to the scientific explanation. And that's part of the reasoning. And we want these explanations to get increasingly more complex as students move through the system. But we still want students in elementary to be doing this, and we want students that are in high school to be really looking at data in a little bit more complex way than just comparing two data points. And I don't know if anyone has anything to add to that.
Yeah, I would just add that I see primarily two different ways of doing a claim evidence reasoning in our high school courses. One would be to start with the claim and then collect your evidence, and then, you know, in your reasoning, explain whether your claim was correct or not. And I've seen it done where the evidence leads to a claim, and your reasoning is, you know, explaining that connection, right? So I would just add on to what Susan would say, that I've seen both of those work.
And I think the piece that used to be missing in kind of laboratory conclusions was the reasoning part. And just really pulling that out, that everything that we're doing is trying to move students forward in their in being increasingly scientifically literate and accurate. And so that's where the reasoning becomes really important, and we really thank the NGSS for kind of bringing that to our attention, because I really think that it was missing as a focus before NGSS.
And speaking of scaffolding, I think we need to really be mindful that for any elementary teachers, the primary grades at least, that the focus is really on just getting kids to make a claim and give that evidence, because later on they'll have more, they're more developmentally ready to get that reasoning in there. So
Yes, I come from kindergarten, and yes, we would definitely not use the reasoning yet. And I know there's a great book called What's Your Evidence that really outlines the progression of claim evidence reasoning from, I think it's K to 8, if I remember right. But yeah, just to think about how do we build these skills so when kids get to middle and high school, they're ready to be writing some in-depth explanations.
If we could just get kids to be able to make really good descriptions of their evidence, and really that, I mean, as a high school teacher, I would have loved kids to be able to do that.
And
Thank
we've
you for
actually,
bringing that up.
one of our Algebra 1 teams has started using claim evidence reasoning in a math context, which has really been a fun challenge. And we've tried it successfully in a couple of different ways. One was in a statistics unit, which looks almost exactly like it does here in terms of, you know, we're going to make a claim, we're going to gather evidence that is the statistical evidence, and then our reasoning is going to explain the connection between those. And we've also tried it in more of a, you know, quote unquote pure math format where the evidence really is the reasoning. So I would say it looks slightly different in math, but you can really make a solid case for using this across the curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I wanted to add on to that in Beaverton, they were the social in middle school, social studies and science were using the same claim evidence reasoning template that we showed just in the prior slide. So when students have those kind of same common practices in multiple classes, that is another very important scaffold for moving students forward.
I agree. It's very powerful when they can see that bridge between their English and their math and their social studies, and yeah. So as I think Lori mentioned a few moments ago with the think, pair, share, but I cannot stress enough, and so every time I have a chance to talk with professionals and other science colleagues, just this idea of talk within classrooms and providing students the language and the scaffolding in place in order to have conversations. So using claim evidence and reasoning. And so there are many tools out there, but I just wanted to reiterate that this idea of sharing what you're thinking, backing it up by evidence, and reasoning that through, students grow with more practice when they're doing it verbally, when they're doing it written, and when they're listening or reading something. And so I just wanted to put this in here, that to scaffold those classroom conversations and have students with the language, you know, I think this because this, or my evidence is this, whatever, providing those, and really, at least in the beginning, depending on your populations or your students, but I would say for all kids, you know, making that a regular part of your classroom is so important. So I just wanted to put that in there. And this is a tool from the STEM teaching tools, but there's lots out there that can help with this at all levels. And then the next slide, part of, as a teacher, I'm always having the lens of what does this look like? How could I assess a conversation? And so one of the pieces I've been, I wanted to share is that this is another simple table in this case. And the link that Leah can provide is a blank slate, but this is what it looks like in my classroom. And when I'm listening to a classroom conversation, this might be a whole classroom conversation, and I'm stepping out of it, and students have to join using a sentence frame, and I'm just kind of taking note of who's asking questions, who's using evidence, and I share them what this looks like, and say, you know, I'm wanting to document, part of what I'm trying to do is capture how we're doing this and how this builds as a skill over the year. And so I just wanted to share this as an assessment tool, a formative assessment tool that I've used to capture some of these dialogues. The next piece that is available are two different scaffolding tools to get kids to, Leah, if you go forward one more. Sorry. Thank you. And these are two different writing tools that help students kind of, whether it's for a conclusion to a lab or a reading or whenever they need to be writing claim evidence and reasoning. They're just kind of two different formats. I sometimes print them back to back and kids can choose which one they like better. One is more of in an outline form, and one is this form, which is more sort of like a paragraph structured written explanation. And kids having that sort of consistent tool in place really allows for students to not to have to grapple with the tool. They just get to put their ideas down. And so I just wanted to share this one, and then the next one, the next slide there is the one you saw used earlier. And we're gonna look at a couple student samples where they have been reading and then writing a claim evidence reasoning. And the last piece, I guess I should pause. Are there any questions or comments? I feel like I'm talking a lot.
And if you don't have your chat open, you'll want to open it up because we've linked to all of these scaffolded documents in the chat.
And so once you have sort of these tools that students have available to use, another important piece would be the next slide, Leah, which is to have a consistent way to assess their work and assess each other's work, and for you to offer feedback as well. So this is just one way that I've been using, having these must-haves for claim evidence reasoning, but I know different districts use rubrics or whatever sort of assessment for claim evidence reasoning, but again, having a consistent feedback and a way for students to edit peer work and their own, and then you can give the same feedback.
We have someone in the chat who shared they're using this claim evidence reasoning format in art.
Oh, cool.
Students look at characteristics of surrealistic art and then do a one-page CER saying that Georgia O'Keeffe was a surrealistic painter or she was not. So making a claim about the style of the artwork that they're looking at.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So I think right now what we were hoping is that we would have time to look at some student sample work and to break into smaller groups so we could dialogue that work a little bit. And we put some questions in for groups to chat about. And also, as we break into those small groups, in the document gives you a little bit of context about the unit of study for that particular work and where that came from. So be sure and just sort of read through that either quietly and then before we discuss.
So when you get put into your small groups, you'll need to go to the link in the chat to access the work that we've posted there. And we're hoping that you will discuss what it is that you're finding with each other. You will not be able to link it through the PowerPoint. You will have to go through the chat link.
And I will be setting those up in just a second.
Does anybody have any questions that they want to ask? Or other tools that they've been using to scaffold student writing? I've had students come in from another class before and they were writing a paper for English and they wanted to have this outline. They'd come in and ask me, can I use that? I'm going to be writing a paper for English and I would like to have it, so it's nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to open up the breakout rooms and a few folks are going to stay in this main session with me. just so that when we have the recording, we have some conversation that's on my recording. So yeah, you'll see an invitation in just a minute. Except for the people who are staying with me. You will not see an invitation. Hi. Okay, so I will post a link to this document for us to open. And if any of you are having a hard time, I can also share my screen. Let's see. Okay, so we're going to be opening this Google Doc together. So we have some examples here of middle school work. So we're exploring the data around the phenomenon of the peppered moth change in population from a lighter variation to a darker variation for the first 3 examples. And this first one is an English learner. Is everyone able to see it okay? So yeah, what are you noticing with the students' work? And you can feel free to call out or type in the chat what you're noticing.
I thought it was interesting on the first one that their reasoning kind of was didn't fit with their evidence. They kind of were pulling in something like the lichens, and they hadn't addressed the lichens before, and all of a sudden here it is in their reasoning statement.
And there might be a connection with the lichen and the pollution, but the student didn't make that clear.
Yeah, so I mean, I think their claim it's not a great statement, but it is a yes, I think this, or no, I think that. And their evidence isn't too bad, but then their reasoning statement doesn't tie the two together, doesn't tie the claim and the evidence together. Sorry, I haven't read the other ones.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I noticed also the student just using the language that was available to them. So saying this leads to the, and I'm not even sure how to pronounce it, living more, which was kind of an interesting way to say like they're more successful to reproduce, you know? So yeah, that made me think about the fact that they're an English learner and expressing their ideas with the language that they have that day, you know, to use.
Holy smokes, I'm having a hard time reading the second one.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
No, let me see if I can, I'm going to make that bigger. So let me lose you for a second.
That's okay. I can try to read it too. I believe pollution and genetics affect the gradual shift in peppered moth population over time. That's the claim. In areas where sulfur dioxide didn't kill lichen and turn the trees black. So there's that connection that the other student
didn't make.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Oh, I can't, yeah, I'm not sure if I can read all of this.
Boy, I'm having a hard time. We have to go to number 3.
Yeah. Oh, so their reasoning says sulfur dioxide destroyed the lichen, and something about the moths, leaving a black stain that hides moths from predators. So so it seems like the student did a better job of connecting.
Yeah, connecting the two.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think their evidence is okay. It might be better to, like, if they could have some, numbers or some statistics or, something in the evidence part of it, because I always think of evidence as being the data.
Mm-hmm.
And if they can produce data, say, here's my claim, here's my data, and this is how I tie the two together.
Mm-hmm. Let's see if the next one is a little easier. Oh yeah, this is slightly better handwriting, I think.
Handwriting. I think it's a combination of bad handwriting and it's faint, hard to read. That's a pretty involved claim statement. That's pretty high level, actually. And this one, she or he is addressing, my evidence comes from this specific information. Does cite statistics, which is good. That's what you want to look for.
Much more specific.
Yeah.
Oh, and they really use a lot more detail in the reasoning about like just genetics, like how that connects into.
Yeah, which is nice because that ties to their, talking about dominant versus recessive genes in their claim statement. So that's one thing I look for when the kids are writing. Did you come back to what you originally were talking about in your claim?
Yeah, it's very clear.
Yeah, that's a pretty high level writing. Was that one also an ELL student?
I think it was, I'm scrolling up to check. I think
Number
it was
one.
the first. Yes, the first one. And that's an interesting conversation to think about the supports that an English learner would need to be able to write, to get their ideas out.
Yeah. Right.
And then we have a couple more, which is a different phenomenon. Oh yeah, so this one is, sorry, I'm scrolling so much. Change in population, but this time it's finches, and a change in beak size after a drought, and a drop in the number of seeds available. And it's on the Galapagos, so it's, you see some interesting things happening. Yeah, so this student also had some more data in their evidence. This one's also a little hard to read.
I know. Oh my goodness.
Get these kids typing.
Yeah, well, and it looks like, I mean, to me, just superficially, not knowing the whole thing, but it looks like they've given a good amount of data.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have this many for these seeds, and I have that many for, you know, this sides. And
then there's another one here.
that's kind of difficult. Like, oh my God,
Yeah.
read your handwriting.
So this shows that yes, beak size did matter because the larger beaked bird survived while the shorter beaked bird died. Having a bigger beak allowed those finches to crack open seeds. Smaller beak finches couldn't crack open seeds that are necessary for them to survive.
I would say that that one doesn't give quite the detail in the evidence, but it does do a decent job of making tying it together in the reasoning. So.
Yeah, it's great to see these examples. I feel like it's a great assessment for you as a teacher as well to see what your students are thinking.
Yeah.
Just to see how did I present this to them, or how did they engage in the data? And so we have these prompts. How is the tool enabling kids to engage with the data differently?
The prompts.
Oh, at the top here, just things to think about.
Oh.
How is the tool enabling kids to engage with the data differently? I'm not sure if that means like differently than if they didn't have this tool. Like how is the tool supporting?
Right.
I feel like these prompts at the top are really helpful probably for a lot of kids to really distinguish what a claim is, what evidence is, and what reasoning is.
Right. I'm still, you know, here we are at the end of the year, and I'm still giving the kids prompts, or, you know, I've had them record, you know, a whole page of this is how I would, you know, sentence starters for claims, sentence starters for evidence, sentence starters for reasoning. And there are kids who, I don't need that. But then there are kids who always go back and go to that page to help them get started. So I think the prompts,
they need that.
They need it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's one of those things where even if you've been doing it all year, it's still probably a really helpful support. And those sentence frames are great, especially for English learners to know how to
fill in the blank. You know, and I think the kids also, they don't, you know, well, how much do I have, you know, there's always that have to, how much do I have to write? That's like, well, you know, you have to cover it. So a claim is a statement. So make your statement, yes or no. And then, you know, your evidence is going to have to be a little more beefy than that. But I'd like you to have at least 2 pieces of evidence to back up what you're saying. And then the reasoning statement needs to be at least a statement or 2. So, you know, there's always that, what do I have to do?
Right. How do I know I'm done? What grade do you teach?
I'm high school, but this is mostly freshman level. So they're still, you know, they're still learning a lot. I would get way more detailed stuff from juniors, seniors. I think it's still, you know, when you're a freshman, you're still pretty immature learner. So having helps. But the prompts,
Mm-hmm.
the having this page, and I've given him this page before too, just to write your claim in this column, write your evidence in this column.
Right.
Instead of being all over the page, sometimes that happens.
And all over with the thinking.
Yes, they're all over. And so just getting organized, I think that page really helps them just get organized. And even if you get your initial thoughts down, then you could go back to your clean piece of paper and, really write out and make sure you have good sentence structure or whatever, if that's important.
Just so you know, I'm closing out the breakout rooms. I know it's almost time for us to wrap up. So folks will be joining us. But thank you. It's really fun to have this time to just look at student work and talk about it together.
Breakout room 3's back in the house.
Yay. Thanks. I know I saw somehow I gave Susan like the smallest group. I'm not sure what happened. I thought I put more people in there, but she only had one person with her. So, but
Hey there.
Hi.
We had great conversation.
Awesome. Yeah, we did too.
We did have fun.
So Maureen had a really great question, and I'm going to say, Maureen, ask your question.
Oh, and you might have to unmute yourself.
So I had kind of asked it earlier how to provide more scaffolding for my struggling students. And we had an example on ours with, they were saying it was an ELL student, and the level of vocabulary in his reasoning or her reasoning was exceptional, something I never see with 7th graders. So I'm wondering how you got that vocabulary in there.
Is Berkeley back? Because that would be her student.
She should be. Everybody should be back.
And Berkeley did teach at a Title I school, and that had a lot of ELL and special education students in her classroom. And I think, I'm just going to, I want her to actually say for sure how she got that ELL, but I think it's just all of the practice, and that Christy and I were talking about in our breakout room. It's the multiple modalities for having students practice by speaking, using sentence frames, and having those supports. But I want Berkeley,
Yes.
does she post, does she have word
here.
and things like that? Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is an end of the year. This is a student who, students had this took a long time to get to this point. So they have shared their data verbally. They have walked through graphs. They've listened to each other. So this, like the scaffolding we were talking about for the claim, they're plugging in their ideas. They're using those sentence frames. Solution has an effect on the moth's survival. And the data, it's taking them a while to get the data from their graphs, but they've already shared that information. And this student was, I don't remember what level, but he was, not English. He was able to communicate in English. And so, I don't know, having this tool was really allowed him to sort of put his ideas, but this took a while. Did that answer your question? So I don't know. I think the scaffolding comes from the consistent use of the tools and then the ability to process it orally, and then the space to be able to articulate that in writing. But drawing and other things would have been fine too, if that was.
Like you do accept that students using words and images and data.
Yes.
What I like that even though it was that the ELL student had data as part of their evidence, which is awesome.
And the other piece that's hard to see with this, and I know our time is coming to an end shortly, but this was a really complex task. This came from Activate Learning, their iQuest middle school curriculum. And the beauty of that curriculum is that it was complex and it did take a while, and students were really invested in their argument. He wanted to be able to explain what this shift in the population, and that's part of it too.
Yeah, I appreciated the student use the language that they had available to explain it, even if it wasn't all scientific language. Their ideas are there.
I know that we're at our time, and I don't know if we're going to have a chance to share one more very important kind of way to have students interacting with data and using the claim evidence reasoning that are an implicit part of this. And I did put the link for this data nuggets in the chat, and I did have a chance to talk with Christina in our breakout session, but Data Nuggets is a free website, and if you go to the next one, I think it talks a little bit about like how they're structured. The next slide. So there are 4 levels so you can choose an appropriate level. We wanted to provide a resource that our elementary through our advanced high school teachers could use. And then there's 3 levels of scaffolding for each of the data nuggets. And these are real scientists who provide real data, real scenarios, and students then graph that data and then have to provide a claim evidence reasoning. And I know we don't have time to talk much more about it, but Berkeley, do you want to add anything? Because I know that you really love these and use these a lot in your classroom.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just what Susan said. If you could maybe go to slide 31, Leah, or just jump ahead a little bit. What I think is really important is that, again, this idea that students are reading other scientist work and pulling a claim out of that. And they, again, with practice, they just become much more comfortable with complex sets of data, and they're able to sort of, again, see how scientists collect data to argue a claim. And I just can't stress enough the beauty of this resource in terms of having complex real life data for students to, and it has the same language as argue a claim, support it with evidence and reasoning. And so I would highly encourage you to spend a few minutes and check it out. And I just put in here, you're welcome to flip through the slides, but these are just student examples for what evidence looks like as they're reading this, and how reasoning, what reasoning, and they have answer keys for teachers to look at for examples of evidence and reasoning. They're great sub-plans. They're a great resource where if you want to compare students' understanding of claim evidence reasoning at the beginning of the year with the end of the year, it's a really powerful tool where you're not having to reinvent the wheel. Mm-hmm. I don't know if others have used it and have anything to add to that, but it's an incredible resource.
So I see Lori shared that Berkeley will be leading a workshop again this summer for OSTA with for claim evidence reasoning and many other topics. And we had a question: is it the same content examples as previous years? I'm wondering if this is someone who's attended in the past who might.
Okay, with some modifications, and I could connect with that person individually.
Depends on what year.
Yeah. I'm happy to email or stay on and could chat with somebody. So it's going to be some overlap, but some new and different as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if you're able to attend, it's going to be at Catlin Gable here in the Portland area. That'll be a great opportunity. And we have the link in the chat here. Thank you, Lori. So let your colleagues know. It's nice to have this time to set your intentions for the school year before you get started.
It's a lot of fun.
Does anyone have any questions for us before we close today?
I have a question.
Yeah.
This is Corey. So I am a brand new teacher. It's my first year. And I'm in a school where we kind of cobbled together different activities or different core, what do you, like we've adopted STEM scopes, which really wasn't like a full-on focused lesson plans and stuff like that. So I'm struggling to try to inject some of this in when I'm not able to fully plan like everything I want. So what is the kind of small things I can commit to really, I don't know, give my students at least a improvement, small improvement. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. I don't know, Berkeley, if you want to jump in on this. I think, you know, for us, like just like not expecting perfection as you start this, taking baby steps, and but you know, this is one of the 4 high impact strategies that we have identified. Just, you know, maybe picking something like that as a focus, and just building your own comfort level with that. But involving students as much as you can in them explaining, like, what are they thinking, like really understanding what it is that they're thinking and moving forward. I don't know, Berkeley, what would you like to add?
Well, I would echo what Susan says, which is give yourself permission to, you know, to not have it be perfect at all. That's what every teacher is going to survive. So that idea of baby steps, or, you know, this is what I'm going to focus on with this unit. Even this is a skill I want them to build, and I'm not going to be able to do everything every single time. For me, my classroom, really where I started to feel a shift was when I started scaffolding conversations differently. And so I would seek resources that help students dialogue during labs, during classroom conversation as a whole class. And I would, and this is not just a plug, but I would definitely encourage you, if you are able to come to like the summer class, that you do that, because we'll provide lots of tools that you can apply to any curriculum or any lesson.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I'm like running full speed and trying to bring everything with me, and half of it just kind of falls on the ground.
First year teaching, that's going to be like that. God bless you.
Okay.
I see this and I get excited, and I just want to sit and plan everything, but then I don't have the skills to implement it fully. I don't have that. So I've had some little successes, but it's hard to know, is that better than if I would have just kind of gone with what everyone else was doing? So we'll see next year.
Kudos to you for trying some new things your first year. That's impressive.
Oh, I see Christy's comment in there to you, Corey. It's like drinking from a fire hose. We have all been first-year teachers. We know what you're going through. And bravo for being here after working all day and
seriously
connect with other teachers. We all get it.
And thinking on that big picture level, your first year is like,
oh, well, yeah. I kind of caught the bug as a student teacher. I did my kind of research on CER, and
oh, good.
I haven't figured out how to get students to really write good CER unless they already know how. But I just kind of more of like, oh, will this work? And then it doesn't work. And oh, try this. And so hopefully I can just keep and stumble into the right.
Yeah.
I think one thing that kind of helped me was just have students make up their mind. You know, yes, it's this, or no, it's that. And then go find the evidence to support what you're saying, and not worry about the reasoning piece right away. Just, can they make a claim? I claim this, or I claim this, and now you have to go out and you have to get evidence to back up your claim. And if you can just start with just those two things, then add the reasoning piece, because the reasoning piece is going to tie it all together, but they have to know how to make a claim first and then go get the evidence to back up their claim. Or if the evidence isn't there, then they need to change their claim.
Yeah.
So I think just starting with that might be where you need to be.
Thank you. I kind of like totally reworked what I was going to do, like right at the last minute. I think it was like yesterday or 2 days ago. And I saw a little bit of that, which was really awesome. We were doing, is this a metal or not a metal from all our data? And one girl was like, oh, I think magnesium is not a metal. And then she started doing her data and she's like, well, it doesn't fit. And I'm like, then change.
Light bulbs.
But that's great. I mean, that seems like a success because the student has the opportunity to learn, to see where they went wrong, and it doesn't have to come from you, which is awesome.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, good. Thank you. It's okay. I'll keep doing those little pieces and just keep working.
We're almost at the end of the year.
Good, thank you. No, I really appreciate this, and I got some good ideas. So thank you for putting this together. I found it on Facebook, and I'm glad I just jumped on it.
Oh, great.
Oh, yay! That's more validation that I need to be better about Facebook posting. Susan, I thank you so much for remembering. We have a little exit survey. If you're interested in that professional development certificate for 1 hour, please fill it out, and we just love to hear feedback. It's going to really help us because we're about to plan next year's topics, and so please let us know what you're interested in, and we'll do the best we can to find experts / fellow practitioners who can get into those topics with us a little more deeply. So let us know. And we thank you all for being here so late in the evening and really contributing to a great discussion. It's been fantastic to see folks from all over Oregon and Washington here, and thank you for being here and doing this, and I'm excited to keep it going next year. This will be our last one for this year, and then in the fall, be on the lookout. We'll start doing these again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.